Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of our attendees joining us today for this latest Data Science Central webinar. This is Stephanie Glenn, your host. I'm the Editorial Director at Data Science Central. I'm also the creator of statisticsHowTo.com. I'd like to start our event off today by thanking Ultrix for sponsoring today's event. Ultrix is a longtime supporter of the Data Science Central community, and we're honored to have them sponsoring our event today. Today's webinar is entitled Predictive Analytics Practical Applications, to be presented by Ultrix. Before we begin, I'd like to briefly review the format of today's webinar. Today's event will be 1 hour long. We have two presenters who I'll introduce in just a minute. There will be a 10 to 15 minute Q&A following the presentation. And this event is being recorded and will be available on datasciencecentral.com later this afternoon following today's live event. I'd also like to encourage our attendees to provide questions throughout the presentation. We will be reviewing and presenting them on your behalf during the Q&A portion of today's event. I'm very pleased to introduce today's speakers, Raz Nista with Keras and Melissa Burrows with Ultrix. Raz Nista is the Chief Data Scientist at Keras US. He comes from a background in the physical sciences where he learned to use computers to help people understand complex problems. At Keras, he's worked with numerous clients across the financial, retail, nonprofit, and consumer packaged goods sectors to empower organizations to use data to make better business decisions. The data science team at Keras specializes using the latest machine learning techniques to build rich analytical solutions to answer complex business questions. Melissa Burrows is an advanced analytics advocate at Ultrix who dreams of democratizing data science. A former research physicist and business analyst, Melissa has seen both the business and technical sides of data work and believes all analytics practitioners have more in common than we realize. Thanks for being with us today, Raz and Melissa. We're looking forward to your presentation. From optimizing processes to increasing revenue and driving business growth, executives are realizing the value in artificial intelligence. However, many organizations struggle to bring the necessary people, processes, and technology stacks together. In today's latest Data Science Central webinar, we'll focus on the business processes needed to implement AI-driven insights within an organization. We will discuss investments in new platforms and roles for your strategic roadmap, end-to-end business-focused delivery strategy, good for the whole team, and facilitating change with the right tools and people. You will hear real ROI use cases of an end-to-end AI rollout in retail and the financial services industry, and some of the successes and setbacks along the way. It's time to empower everyone to solve anything. Raz and Melissa, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. You can begin as soon as you're ready to go.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Hello, everyone. I'm Melissa Burrows with Ultrix, and I'll be kicking us off today. So we're here to talk about the practical applications of predictive analytics. Now, data science doesn't happen in a vacuum, and indeed, businesses aren't pursuing predictive analytics, machine learning, or artificial intelligence for these topics' own sakes. Advanced analytics is meant to solve meaningful business problems, which means we must start our conversation with the context of analytics in business. Now, the reality of data analytics in most companies today, it's complex. Lines of businesses are struggling to find and manipulate data so that it can be visualized. IT is struggling with the variety and volume of data and how to securely govern its usage. And finally, data scientists are struggling to get their analytic models into production. So the state of analytics is complicated by the fact that most companies are using a variety of tools from different vendors, and these tools often serve to exacerbate these problems and reinforce the silos that exist between IT, analysts, and data scientists, creating barriers to analytic alignment and innovation. And that's why you need to have a solution in place that will bring decentralized data, analytic assets, and users together, matching needs and haves in ways that bypass traditional legacy methods in order to unlock true value. So by focusing on extending tribal knowledge across your analytic teams, not only will you ensure that you're capturing the analytic IP being created day in and day out within your analytic and data science teams today, but you'll also accelerate the evolution and expansion of your analytic IP across the organization. But these are just the core operational elements that need to be aligned if you're looking to gain the kind of transformative benefits of higher value analytics at scale and creating a path to AI for your organization. There is another major component that is key. So in order to achieve those next levels of analytic maturity that drive digital transformation, you need to focus on breaking the barriers between analytic talent and teams. Digital transformation is about blurring or even obliterating traditional boundaries. It requires more cross-functional collaboration and cooperation, and that includes analytics teams and data science groups. MIT Sloan researched what sets digitally advanced companies apart from their peers, and a key underpinning the creation of true business value and competitive advantage was in their ability to collaboratively work together within and among teams, as well as with key stakeholders and partners, both internally and externally. Now, that same principle holds true for analytics teams. Moving up to the next level of analytic maturity requires a new way of looking at your analytic process, how you empower your analytic talent, and how you help them work together. Now, I'd like to introduce Ultrix partner Kiris to talk us through how to address some of these analytic challenges and opportunities in our business. Kiris is a global consultancy that specializes in developing data and digital technology solutions to optimize business performance. With a team of experts in data engineering, data discovery, and data science, Kiris helps companies turn their data into valuable business insights. Raz Nister is the chief data scientist at Kiris US. He has worked with numerous clients across the financial, retail, nonprofit, and consumer packaged goods sectors to empower organizations to use data to make better business decisions. The data science team at Kiris uses the latest machine learning techniques to build rich analytical solutions to answer complex business questions. Now with that, I'd like to hand it over to you, Raz. Raz, are you ready to pick up the story?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Melissa, the Data Science Central team, for the warm introduction. Very, very happy to be here with everyone and share some thoughts on how to align and how to bring this analytic convergence about, and how to perhaps share some themes and some approaches that we've been using lately to ensure that the work we put in, the technical work that we put into our advanced analytics initiatives bear fruit on the business side. And of course, we're going to talk through some examples, and we've had, of course, some successes and trip-ups along the way. So I'd be very happy to share some of those insights with you today. As Kiris, we're a full data consultancy, so we do bring to the table a sort of full stack solution. Where we do focus on sort of three pillars of data intelligence, as we call it, data engineering, discovery, and science. And this allows us to sort of have a bit of an end-to-end perspective on some advanced analytics initiatives that we've seen implemented throughout various sectors in the economy here, and particularly important in retail, CPG, consumer packaged goods, finance, and nonprofits where we've worked. So very happy to speak to you about some of these initiatives today. So let me back up maybe about 2 years ago, maybe 18 months ago. The way we used to structure project plans, initiatives to take companies and organizations from sort of very raw, very basic analytic capabilities, mostly in Excel, to something, bearing fruit, something interactive, something state-of-the-art, we would put a roadmap in place that looked very similar to something like this. Of course, there's usually differences in timing, and perhaps some of the companies start at different starting points. But in general, this was a fairly average sort of implementation plan that we would come up with after doing a discovery session of a certain time with an organization. So with that being in mind, let me walk you through the thought process of this. So we used to start, of course, we have to get data. It's all about the data today. We'd have to bring it into somewhere, into some kind of architecture, cleanse it, structure it, put it together in meaningful ways so we could do some kind of ad hoc reporting, operational level reporting, understand where our gaps are in our processes. And then only about a year to 18 months out, we would say, then we're going to tackle the big stuff. The AI-driven analytics, machine learning, data science, predictive, whatever we want to call it today. That was a very safe place to put it because typically we didn't have to think about it until 1 year into the project. So I'd like to open up with a polling question, given this sort of typical implementation cycle, to take an organization from very basic sort of Excel level reporting to being AI-driven, to realizing their AI-driven future. We'd like to conduct a brief poll of the attendants. If you could use your web browsers to click on some of these radio buttons to let us know, where is your organization in your AI journey? And we ask this question because oftentimes when we say AI and data science, we think of Facebooks and Googles and Apples and Tesla self-driving cars and all these wonderful sort of applications of AI. But we find most organizations are actually, just kind of touching the surface or getting started. And you can see the poll results coming up here. I'm going to click to the next slide. Here they are. So thank you, everyone, for quickly clicking in on that. And you can see that, basic roadmap and exploration, or haven't started yet, are sort of where people are aligned. And that's a very important starting point for the discussion, because one of the main themes that we're going to share with you today, and something that we've been feeling for the last probably 18 months, is that the roadmap no longer looks like that. Everyone wants to do the advanced analytics and the high value and answer the high value business questions now. And the reason is because there's a lot of buzz. It's a very hot topic these days. And C-level management is pushing back and saying, why are we not hopping on the bandwagon? So now we typically put a project plan in place that looks something like this, with sort of two paths. Of course, we have to get data, structure it, and sort of have some starting architecture to it. But we go for the big ticket items now. And the reason is because the questions you can answer with advanced analytics typically bring a lot more disruptive value to the organization. They may even change the way you do business or the way your organization functions. And that could be very beneficial for everyone. So the time is now, and that's definitely one theme we want to impress on everyone. But nobody is saying, let's do, deep learning nets and with, 100 internal layers. Nobody is saying, let's do machine learning. Nobody is saying specifically, I want to do data science. The business questions being put forth are very specific. They are value-driven for the organization, and they are certainly not coming from a technical place of origin. The questions being asked are things like, how can we optimize our processes? I want to do better forecasting. This is very typical. That's something that falls, I think, under the data science landscape. Consumer insights, there's a big push in retail and CPG to move away from sort of product-based marketing to building consumer experiences and understanding exactly who is buying and purchasing and consuming your product. So consumer insights is a really hot topic. So who are my customers? Where are they located? Why are they churning? Can I segment them into useful demographics and profiles? And of course, a really big theme which we will focus on today, return on investments. Every organization invests back into their business. In retail and CPG, this is literally, advertising and promotion spend, trade marketing, things you spend money on from your profits to build better brands, to have a healthier brand image in the market. We've seen this in finance as well, working with some investment banks. Typically, investment banks make money off the spread between the buy-sell, and they would love customers to trade on their platforms. That's how they make money. So there's a lot of effort and touch points with the customers in terms of meetings and phone calls and C-level executive meetings and access to IPOs and all kinds of things that sweeten the pot for people to trade on the platform. So how much of a particular effort do you put in to increase your revenues, your sales, or your profits? And that's a really hot topic, ROI, that I think also is a pretty complex sort of end-to-end initiative to knock out of the park, and something we will focus on today. So for our next polling question, if you could, please answer, which initiative does your organization need to deliver better results on? Are you more focused on process optimization, like supply chain and forecasting? Do you really understand or want to understand who the consumers are, or is ROI a big initiative for you? And I'll just give everyone a minute for some of the results to come in. Okay, I'm going to show the results in 3, 2, 1. Thank you, everybody. I'm clicking next. And there we have it. So clearly, process optimization, consumer insights, very hot topics. Return on investments, maybe not so much for this crowd, but certainly something we've been feeling out in the industry for quite a while. So let us pretend for a second that we do want to do advanced analytics. We are going to tackle these big ticket items for an organization. We did a great discovery session. We have a project plan. We have use cases. We have everything in place. But for today specifically, and based off what we've heard from Melissa of how to bring about that actual analytic convergence, let us not focus for a second on the technical aspects of machine learning. Let's not think about how to actually get a good machine learning model for today. Let's worry instead about actually getting one, and then what do we need to do once we have one? And that's really the focus for what we're going to speak about in the next few slides. And some of it may sound a little bit high level. I certainly hope not too preachy, but we certainly want to touch upon some themes and perhaps some approaches that we've seen to actually get advanced analytics to stick within an organization and to be used by the actual business that we set out to actually provide value to. So what are some thoughts on getting an end-to-end process for advanced analytics, or say for building a machine learning model? Let me tell you that building a proof of value concept is not a long process anymore. We typically see a few weeks. You establish the value very quickly, if not, sometimes days, to a matter of a week or two. The reason for that is because a lot of organizations obviously have data. Data is ubiquitous, it's everywhere. But most organizations in the Fortune 500 have begun to report on it, structure it, use it. There's some architecture behind it already, so the data is available. And more so, there's all these agile tools like Ultrix, which is a fantastic example of an analytics platform that will allow the citizen data scientists and perhaps people who are not so technical with coding to do things they never thought they were capable of doing before. So the convergence of these 2 points, I think, makes it very quick to sort of establish the value in tackling certain initiatives like we saw. Now, once you actually build a model, like we said, it's not going to take too long to get a useful concept, a model that we're going to have to actually productionize within the business. There's a whole plethora of issues that tend to creep up once that initial process is done. Things like, how are you going to engineer it? What are the data pipelines? Does it have to go to IT? What's the handover process? And who owns what process? And how's the scheduling done? A very typical example of using a model on the business side is to build an app around it. Where did that come from? How do you build an enterprise application all of a sudden? How does it connect to the data and to the model? How do we, more importantly, socialize the insights? We've run projects where I think we've built really interesting and useful models that I think would have been very transformational, but we did not sell the concept right to the business to begin with, and we stuttered, and we had to play catch up, and we had to market the insights. So how do we circumvent that process, and importantly, how do we socialize the insights from the get-go, right? And these are all very important things, and you can see even in the best of cases, it'll still take roughly 3 to 6 months to get something standing, and that's a long time. Your competitors are doing it, so that's why we say the time is definitely now to take on some of these approaches. And we'd like to walk you through an example of ROI, essentially, looking at a maybe retail or CPG example and asking the question of what investments increase our return. And we're taking this in the context like we're a new data scientist or we come into a new organization and our managers want us to optimize ROI. And this is not a new problem. This problem has been around since the dawn of marketing. People have tackled it since the 80s in Excel, and entire media agencies have been built around probably some really good linear models. But now we have all this really great sophisticated machinery where the central component, the model, can be built using neural networks or random forest regressors and all kinds of really neat things. So we're going to take the context that we're starting out here and we need to build an ROI model. So what are the steps that we should take to sort of get this initiative launched and get it to stick within the organization? The first thing we would do, and I say this more from experience than foresight, start at the end. Think about the end user. Think about who the actual business user will be. They're probably not too technical. Maybe they are if we're lucky. But how are they going to use the insights? What's the interface? Forget the model. How are they going to be able to do their day-to-day or improve their processes of their day-to-day once you start to feed them the insights? And we really have to understand the analytics value chain to do this. Typically, from the technical data science perspective, we're so concerned with starting on the left-hand side. We need information. We got to prep the data, ETL, cleanse, do all that stuff, run it through all the gamut of the analyses that we do, that we don't give enough thought to the presentation and consumption, and especially the application of the insights. So it's really helpful to start from the end and engage with the business users right away. So some points on socializing insights. First of all, we always bring best-in-class technologies and methodologies to the table, and we communicate this right from the beginning. Typically people will ask, how is this different than what we're doing? We have to be able to show the value in the approach. Number two, definitely start at the end. Think about the end users day-to-day. Think about how they're actually going to consume the information. And that will structure the rest of the architecture for you. And make sure to borrow phrases from Apple here, that it's very user-focused design. Typically, people won't see the model itself. They will just be interacting with it, much like you would in a Rocket Mortgage app on your phone. And very importantly, we're going to speak briefly about managing the change within the organization. And what are some strategies to do that? One strategy, a change management strategy we implement, is called the ADKAR principle. Build awareness, build desire, create knowledge about the change, implement the change, and reinforce the sustained learning. And this sounds very high level, but underneath this, we actually have a framework right down to almost the schedule of roles and emails that have to go out, of communication that has to happen, because as Melissa said, the organizations that will win in this race are the ones that will have this ability to do the cross-functional, cross-business domain analysis, and communication will be key for that. So do not take change management lightly. Do not take socializing the insights lightly. These are first steps that we have to do when we start these initiatives. What is another thing that we have to do? Well, we have to build on the right foundations, and this is where we have to think of something more than a technical project. We can do the technical stuff. I'm telling you that the technical stuff will sort itself out. It's the business processes, the roles, and the management around it that will be difficult. So first, let us understand a little bit how data science or advanced analytics differs from something that's more traditional, like BI, business intelligence, or operational reporting. Well, the goals are different. In BI, you sort of have a retrospective look on what's happening. In data science, you want to be able to predict. You want to be able to optimize. So the ante is up just from that. The skill set is certainly augmented. You definitely have to know data modeling. You have to know some SQL. You have to know planning and master data management. But in addition, you're going to bring, your data scientists will bring additional skill sets to deal with unstructured data, to build chatbots. What's a chatbot? Nobody even knows how to implement these things. Machine learning, all these new sort of techniques and capabilities that will require tools and architectures behind them, and some of those are listed below. But most importantly, I think we have to think about how the results will be used. So typically BI, you have dashboards or reports going out, and somebody's getting, usually, as much as we love visual analytics, I still see a lot of pivot tables flying around. But with advanced analytics, you have apps. You have integrated sliders that allow you to do what-if analysis and start to ask really deep questions of your data. So it becomes really engaging and powerful to understand the patterns that lead to some of the insights. So what is a typical good place to start? Well, like we said, even in Ultrix, don't just think of it as a workflow. It's not just a one-shot thing. It's an initiative. And because of that, it has other dimensions around it that we should think of. Things like governance. Who owns the process? Who's going to review it? Who's the business stakeholder? How are we going to productionize a model? What does that even mean? How are we going to design the solution? Is it going to be modular? How are we going to design the data pipelines? Where do those live? Who owns those processes? There's a lot more at stake when you think about an enterprise application of an advanced analytic initiative, and especially with things like data I/O and performance and the analytics itself. Like who's really gonna govern it and say, yeah, this is kind of best in class or best practice approach to the analytics. Well, if you kind of take this perspective, and this is a very consulting thing to do to sort of assess where you are and where you need to be along these standardized dimensions, you get a sort of gap analysis, and it'll allow you to sort of identify the areas that you may have to address before you could stand up an initiative in the organization. And really what we're saying, and Melissa touched upon this, is that if you want data science initiatives to succeed, you need communication between the different business units and between the different stakeholders. And typically we see this as a trifecta of success between business, IT, and data science. And each brings its own sort of value and requirements to the equation, but definitely communication and actively cooperating between these domains will ensure the success of any initiative. So how can we manage this? Well, we need the right people in the right places. And how do we manage going from the POV stage to sort of an actual enterprise application? You really need to focus on the right roles within the organization. Typically between business and IT or data, like everyone's very kind of familiar with BI these days, so that was like the business intelligence manager. But now with data science, we see the need for sort of two roles. One is a solutions engineer, as we call it, somebody who can help the data science team with things like architecture, getting data to them, pipelines, things that data scientists, to be honest, are not particularly trained in. They need a sandbox environment, but they're not particularly good at setting up that sandbox environment. I mean, you may find these unicorns every once in a while. But more importantly, then, we see this role emerging, this need for communication between business and the data science team. And here's what we call the insights manager, or what McKinsey partially calls the analytics translator. This is somebody usually in a little bit more senior role who has experience in the particular sector or industry, but who knows data science, and who could essentially talk to the business in a language they understand, and who could take results from the very technical sort of junior data science team who's going to talk about p-values and sort of best fit and this and that, and translate that into actions that the business has to take. And that role is crucially important, to sort of find somebody who needs to fill that role. And maybe these aren't full-time positions, but there's definitely some responsibility along these lines of communication, and should definitely actively seek out some of these types of roles when you're setting up an initiative, a company-wide initiative to do advanced analytics, not just for one use case, but to take you from sort of the beginning Excel level to the AI-driven future that we're mentioning. We have some suggestions even on how to set up the organization and how to set up a COE concept, we call it. This is a center of excellence. So you could both manage the technical and the business and the end user engagement in one place. Be happy to go into further details. But more importantly, we have to bring the right tools and platforms to the table, such as Ultrix. And this is an analytics platform that we've loved using for my whole time at Keras, essentially. And I will pass it back to Melissa to give you a little bit of an introduction to what Ultrix is and what Ultrix can do.
Thank you so much, Raz. I appreciate that. So yeah, just a few minutes to let everyone know a little bit more about Ultrix. Ultrix takes a different approach to analytics. We provide an end-to-end unified analytics experience that empowers all data workers to quickly and easily move back and forth between analytic tasks, from things like discovering the right data assets and collaborating with fellow analysts across the organization in a governed way, to connecting, prepping, and blending all your data, no matter how exotic or how big, then quickly moving into developing advanced analytic models in a code-free and code-friendly environment. And Raz is going to show you more about this, how we can do things like leveraging Visualytics to see how your data changes across your entire workflow, not just at the output. And finally, once those models are created, we help deploy them into production for real-time scoring, monitoring, and management. No more months-long deployment cycles. So best of all, we help you automate your processes so you can build once and repeat never. And because we let you share and publish analytic workflows securely across your organization, we help you break down the analytic silos between teams. So you need to have a solution in place that will bring decentralized data, analytic assets, and users together to unlock value, create a data science and analytics culture, and pursue predictive analytics, machine learning, and ultimately AI at scale. So the ease of use, speed, and sophistication of the analysis that our platform enables are enhanced through highly repeatable visual workflows. Our platform's intuitive user interface includes over 200 drag and drop tools that can be used to create and share these analytics. These tools allow you to assemble workflows that represent your models visually, making them comprehensible and highly repeatable. Our user interface lets you seamlessly view the underlying data, metadata, and applied analytics at any stage during the process. Two big highlights that are relevant for our conversation today include our code-friendly advanced modeling, which includes R and Python models. We're also known for deploying business-changing predictive models into production. So at Ultrix, we've always believed that data prep and blending would be a core competency of any analytic system because it's the foundation for every type of analytics. Indeed, proper data preparation is critical to good data science. Organizations now see increasing business value from more sophisticated analytics, such as predictive modeling. And taking the next step in the analytic journey from descriptive to spatial, predictive, and even prescriptive is where you truly begin to see the ROI. Now let me show you just a quick example of the powerful results that can come out of practical predictive analytics. So for some background, Southwest Airlines has the largest fleet of Boeing aircraft in the world. To monitor and manage this fleet, Southwest relies on massive amounts of enterprise data collected throughout every aspect of their operations. For example, fuel. That makes up 27% of an airline's operating cost. Fuel consumption analysis for Southwest took 3 whole days every month, merging operating and fuel consumption data and working across teams like purchasing, accounting, and operations for fuel. The result was a 150 tab spreadsheet, 1 tab for each airport and another 40 or so just for calculations. Accuracy and repeatability were completely lacking. So Southwest used Ultrix to build a repeatable workflow to prep and blend the data, and they used predictive models to generate those reports in just 10 minutes, a defined repeatable process. As a result, Southwest saw a 70% increase in predictive fuel forecasting accuracy. Now they have a 12-month forecasting horizon, whereas spreadsheets could only do 1 month at a time. They can also now see seasonality, trends at each airport, and outliers to prepare for unexpected conditions. Southwest has standardized on these Ultrix models as the sole means to calculate fuel consumption today. Now, let's see what achieving these kinds of business results look like in practice. I'd like to hand you back over to Raz for a demonstration. Raz, back to you.
Thank you, Melissa. And it's completely not an understatement to see these types of returns on really an investment that is so minuscule to the amount of time that organizations been spending before on certain processes. Let us build an ROI example in Ultrix. And this is the fun part for us. I want us to have fun. I want to play around with the data. I want to dive into some models. And remember, the idea is to kind of take everything we spend money on and try to predict our revenues or our sales or something like that. And we'll be able to sort of build this attribution model, as they call it here on the right, so we could identify that perhaps all of our sales and trade marketing efforts are really contribute about 60% to our revenues, whereas maybe our above-the-line marketing only contributes about 25%. And what's Facebook? What about Facebook and digital media and so on? So we want to find out the impact of everything we spend money on. So let me start to share my screen. Okay. I am sharing my screen and we'll go into Ultrix right now. I hope everyone could see my screen now. And I would like to introduce you to the Ultrix Designer platform. You can see it's a very visual platform. There's really no sort of command prompt to do kind of coding level stuff in here. But essentially, Ultrix introduces you to a visual programming paradigm. And everything you'd want to do with data or operate on data or use a function on data is represented by a little icon or a little app at the top by these pictures. And if you wanted to input some data, for example, you would look for the Input Data app and simply drag that down into your workspace. And if you wanted to select some rows, you would drag down the Select tools. And if you wanted to filter something, you would drag down the Filter. So you can see this is how we program in these visual programming paradigms. And the advantage is that there's no coding, and it's much, much faster, even for us. And I come from, like a numerical physics background, so I did a lot of C++ coding. It's just much, much faster for us to engage with the data and see what's going on. And it's a very easy user interface to get used to. And I would say the learning curve is about as equivalent as learning your smartphone sort of application all over again. So for example, if we point to a file, we could bring in some data just to give you some perspectives on what's going on. I point to a flat file on my disk. I automatically see a snapshot of the data here below. Maybe I select some rows. Maybe I don't want my latitude and longitude, and maybe I change my actual volume to a double precision number and perhaps set a filter here on my volume for only sort of like high level orders if I want. You can see it's very easy and user engaging to sort of set up these types of flows. And when I press play, the workflow that you see here will run much like a query, and out of the results we get a full view of what's going on at every step in our data, plus a profile of what's in our data, including how many nulls I have, how many uniques, and all kinds of really rich, interesting information at each step of the workflow. So it's a very fast analytics programming platform to get into because it gives you the capability to see your data at each step of the way. And it comes bundled in with all kinds of predictive capabilities. So for example, if I wanted to build a random forest, I would just simply drag the tool down onto the screen, connect the data, set my target variable, and pretty much input my predictor fields into it. So it's very easy to access the advanced analytics tool set. And in fact, if you look up here, we have a linear regression tool, and it's no more complex to build a neural network, a random forest, or a boosted model than it is the standard sort of linear regression models we used to build. And of course, we want to use these sophisticated advanced analytics. So let us go to a realistic example that I'm going to show you just very quickly here. I'm going to close these screens so we get a bird's eye view. This is sort of a data prep flow in Ultrix that we put together and ran already end to end. You can see we're bringing in some sales data, which we call depletions, tagging it with demographics information, which is also available in Ultrix, bringing in market data from Nielsen, and coupling it with our actual media spends, which we want to predict on. And the data sort of looks like this in dashboard format. Essentially, we spend money on various marketing initiatives like cable TV and network, and we want to be able to predict the impact on this red line, which is our revenues. And maybe they kind of correlate. They really don't if you're just looking at this slice of the business, and this is the limitations of BI, because what you don't see here is all the trade marketing stuff we put in, all the stuff from competitors and sort of what the market is doing. And the model will be able to take all of these into account and allow us to sort of forecast our revenue. And how complex is it to build a machine learning end-to-end framework in Ultrix in this analytics platform? Again, this is pre-built, but you can see I bring the data in after I've cleansed it and prepped it, and I'm building about 7 models here, and I just run the workflow, which takes about a minute, so I'm not going to do that in this example. But out of the results, we get very rich and detailed information about, for example, what happened inside the actual model. So from the random forest, I could sort of see, my error rate go down, and of course my variable importance, and this gives you a sense of the insights of which fields start to become important in the model. And this is already hugely impactful for an organization to start to understand this. So we did the modeling. We did the modeling in a matter of almost days in real life during this example. Where did the project go based off everything we discussed? Well, we talked to essentially the marketing people, and we said, we got this model. Look at all the insights we could get out of it. What do you need? They said, we need an app. Okay, fine. We built them an app. We went to our screen here, and we used the Ultrix Analytics Gallery, which is essentially an app store, and we built them an app so they could go in, run essentially like their marketing forecast for whatever product and maybe whatever market they're interested in, and essentially after a minute or two comes out a report that looks a little bit like this, where we optimize their spend. And we said originally you were spending a lot of money on sort of cable TV. If you take a little bit out of that and pump it more into Spanish network, because we saw that was a rising demographic that was sort of based off our consumer segmentation analysis. If you take that money and invest a little bit more in Spanish network TV, we're predicting returns of like 13%. Like, that's huge. That's something we should go after. So it was an amazing discussion starter, very important to at least get to that stage, and we got there very quickly. So I'm going to go back to the slides now and sort of talk you through what happened, where do we end up. And of course, from the model, we get all kinds of useful and insightful information. We were here. Actually, we ended up forecasting for a few months, so we got 8% increase in returns. And the conversation went like this. Well, I need the app sort of not in Ultrix, I need it on my phone. How do we productionize the application? I don't understand how to plan for this because our TV spends are sort of locked in, already at the end. So we hit all of these roadblocks that we should have taken care of before, like I discussed with the business users. We didn't design the project from the top down, but we had to play catch up, and we had to sort of increase it. So I thank you for bearing with me through that example. And one of the biggest pain points we had was sort of productionizing the model. Like, who would own the model? Where would it live? Would IT own it? How do we get it up to sort of an API endpoint so we can use it? All kinds of things started bubbling to the surface we didn't expect. And I'm going to pass it back to Melissa right now to walk you through some of the capabilities of the Ultrix platform in crossing this sort of bridge.
Fantastic. Thank you, Raz. I appreciate that. So now that Raz has shown you what we can develop, we need to think about that last mile of analytics, making it actionable. And this is often the hardest barrier for analytic teams to cross. So what we see is months-long projects requiring special development teams and IT to deploy predictive models into business systems. And once models finally get deployed, it's challenging to monitor and manage them. Simply hiring more developers doesn't address the real problem. You must make it easier to deploy models without requiring developers. Now, why? Because of the disconnect between data science teams and engineers. Data scientists work in statistical libraries, either in R or Python most commonly, and then they hand over their code as is to developers who translate it into a shape where it can be made available to your customers or your users. So rewriting R or Python to production Java, .NET, or JavaScript is challenging. And taking an optimized statistical model from R into a Java virtual machine, for example, that's costly rework. Plus, once that data scientist hands over that model to the developer for rewriting, they can't easily retrain or change it in the future. So that language barrier you can see here can have some real costs on the enterprise. One customer, an example, said that the typical cost to deploy one model was more than $250,000, and in many cases, deployments can take 6 to 9 months. So what does deploying models with Ultrix look like? Well, you can create batch reports that are automated or scheduled. You can create an analytic app that runs when prompted. You can output to an Ultrix workflow in a visualization environment such as Tableau, Click, Power BI, or a scheduled cadence. And with Ultrix Promote, you can create immensely valuable real-time applications. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about Ultrix Promote. There are 3 main components to Ultrix Promote: the ability to quickly deploy a model, easily manage that model, and then finally monitor that model. Now let's take a closer look at how that works. Promote provides the flexibility your analytics teams need. You can both deploy R and Python models into Promote without recoding or rewriting. Promote supports popular R and Python libraries, and predictive models can be deployed with the click of a button. Ultrix developed models, like the one Raz showed you, can be deployed automatically from Ultrix Designer's code-free environment in one click as well. And once a model has been deployed to Promote, you can easily embed it into real-time applications using a standard REST API. Promote even provides the code snippets in Java, Python, Ruby, PHP, and Node.js automatically. Ultrix Promote helps you reliably manage your models as well across multiple environments: dev, staging, and production. Multiple versions can be managed to ensure a consistent process for not only your production models, but also those that are being tested for the next release. So you can efficiently manage users and their related permissions to ensure separation of duties across admins, authors, and managers. For example, only managers have special permissions required to promote models into production. Promote also has built-in failover in case there's a hardware issue or some other unplanned outage. Predictive models can be replicated to ensure automatic failover as in a high availability model so that your end users and customers never have to experience an outage, a requirement for business critical applications. Ultrix Promote helps you also securely manage your model's performance, for example, response times and resource usage such as CPU, memory, and disk, with intuitive real-time dashboards. Now, this helps organizations by providing more visibility into your model's availability, health, and performance. All of these features and capabilities give organizations the peace of mind that their models are having the best impact on the business that they can. So here's another real example of the kind of success Ultrix Promote can foster. Strategic Funding Source uses Promote for real-time credit decisioning. Businesses apply for a loan online, and a lead is created in their underwriting system immediately. At that point, a member of their underwriting team clicks a button on that lead record that says Score Applicant. This calls Ultrix Promote to help determine whether or not this individual should get a loan. So with Ultrix Promote, they're drastically reducing the amount of manual loan review time by automating data processing so they can scale for the future and service more customers while still ensuring client engagement and satisfaction. Now that you've seen what's possible with predictive analytics and how you can make it a key driver of your AI strategy, we want you to have the tools to explore your own proof of concept. That's why there's a predictive analytics starter kit for you on the Ultrix Analytics Gallery. It offers an Ultrix designer workflow that teaches the fundamentals of key predictive models, and it'll help you understand how predictive analytics can answer business techniques like A/B testing, logistic regression, and more. And if you don't already have your own copy of Ultrix, download your free trial at ultrix.com/trial. Now, I'll pass you back to Stephanie, who's going to moderate the Q&A session.
Oh, thanks, Raz and Melissa, for that excellent presentation. We'll get started with today's Q&A session, and I want to thank the audience for their participation. We've got a great many questions that have come in during the presentation, and we'll do our best to get through all of them in the remaining time. During this Q&A session, I'll leave up this screen with contact info for Raz and Melissa if you'd like to contact them following today's webinar. Let's get started. The first question is a two-part question. How long is a typical discovery stage for a strategic AI initiative, and do you offer free assessments?
Hi, thank you. That's a great question. So depending on the scale and the scope, it could take anything from a few days, maybe 2 weeks. So the longest I think we've done is about 6 weeks. And that depends on the level of investigation and detail. We have to go into the business side, the information systems, and into the data. So for example, for a project plan, like we saw end-to-end going essentially from 0 to hero, that took about 6 weeks of discovery.
Okay, thanks for that, Raz. Next question. Our organization is stuck in phase 2 of the ADCAR model. What recommendations do you have to successfully transition to phase 3 for adoption?
That is a fantastic question. We saw a really large uptick in sort of adoption and engagement working alongside the business users, so going to their desks, getting to know them essentially, not essentially communicating via indirect means, but sitting alongside them. And I think that facilitated the sort of knowledge transfer that we needed to happen. A lot of the interfaces and the approaches are very new, and I think it takes a while for people to get used to sort of what they're seeing, and especially to understand how they could use the information. So we invested a lot of time in sort of one-on-one talking to stakeholders and sort of champions and key business users.
Okay, thanks, Ross. Next question, is there a way to customize visuals in Ultrix?
Go ahead, Raz. Please, I'd much rather hear it from someone who is not from Ultrix. How do you do it?
So that's a great question. So Ultrix is not an interactive reporting tool yet, but it can make pixel-perfect sort of PDFs, Word docs, Excels that you can send out, schedule, and email. And yes, there is a way to customize all kinds of visuals, all kinds of charts, bar charts, line charts, pies. We made pixel-perfect, static tables and reports with banners and colors and all kinds of things. It has a very capable sort of reporting suite that I think is actually underutilized and under-marketed but we started using it in some instances to get information, especially into C-level management hands, because they do not really go into the dashboards. We started sending out sort of daily recaps or weekly, very beautiful weekly reports directly to their emails.
Okay, thank you. Great answer to a great question. Next question is a big question, really. What is the future of AI?
Wow, that's a fantastic question. I think I don't know if we're in the golden age, approaching a golden age, or sort of past the midpoint of a golden age. I think it's a great time to play with AI and get into it now. I think the future, what we're seeing is hyperconnectivity with IoT, I think with data flying from every single source that you can think of, and being able to compile and collate all of that data in sort of useful platforms, interfaces, and almost like digital sort of experiences for everyone, for the consumer, and engaging in a very interactive way with the data in a very high frequency sort of way. And I think that shift into combining digital plugged in with sort of the AI and the analytics behind it is sort of a trend that we're starting to feel in the market these days.
Okay, well, Raz and Melissa, thank you. Some great answers to some very good questions. For those of you that asked questions that weren't answered today, we will be sending all unanswered questions to Raz, Melissa, and the Ultrix team so they can follow up with you after today's webinar. I have just a few quick announcements. Please mark your calendars for April the 10th, 2019, and our next DSC webinar, Why Data Management Requires Modern Data Ops, featuring Forrester. Also, today's taping will be available for on-demand viewing later today and can be found on the homepage of Data Science Central in the Webinar tab, located at the top of the page. Past webinars are available on demand at datasciencecentral.com. If you haven't had the opportunity to view them, I encourage you to take a look. They provide very useful insight into a wide variety of topics of interest to our data science community. This brings today's webinar to a close. I'd like to thank our audience for their attendance and thoughtful questions. And a special thanks again to Ultrix for their sponsorship, as well as to our speakers today, Raz Nistel and Melissa Burrows, for their insight into today's topic. My name is Stephanie Glenn, and I'm very pleased to have been your host for today's event. I look forward to seeing you all again on April the 10th, 2019. Have a great day.